Lord saw how great man's wickedness on earth had become, and that every inclination of the thought of his heart was only evil at the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the earth, men and animals and creatures that move along the ground, and the birds of the air, for I am grieved that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So, on to Genesis 8, which is the ending of the flood, where Noah comes out of the ark after the waters recede. So I'll start with Genesis 8:21. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. One of the first things that catches my eye in this verse is the word curse. And God says they'll never curse the ground. So that makes me think of all the research I've seen about how the flood may have happened, how the fountains of the deep burst forth, creating fractures in the Earth's crust, changing the environment dramatically. There's lots of records in the Bible of people living to be really old. Like Noah was 600, I think, when he got on the ark, and people just don't live that long now. So something's definitely changed. So it's my belief that right now we're still under the curse of the flood. So when God says he'll never curse the ground again, he really means it, because he hasn't cursed the ground since. We're still under that curse that he established back then. So he's not breaking his own rule to himself. He's saying, never again will I do this. But what about 2 Peter 3? Verse 10 says, But the days of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything in it will be laid bare. Now this isn't a continuation of the curse necessarily, but I think a completely separate act of God. It's not a result of the flood. You might say that God is breaking his promise because he's cursing the earth again, but I don't really see this as a curse, and I'll try to explain that right now. Let's look at Romans 8, verse 19. The creation waits in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed, for the creation was subject to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from the bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in pains of childbirth right up to this present time. I actually think that the flood is a result of the fall, because God, I think, curses the ground there too, and then it's possible that God is referring to the curse in Genesis 8:21 as to being the curse mentioned in Genesis 3. But, I don't know if that's actually true, but it's something to think about. And so right now the earth is waiting to be liberated from this bondage that it's in, and I think that that's where 2 Peter comes in and talks about how God's going to restore the earth to what it once was, and that it's not actually a curse, but restoration. I don't know what else to say. And that's exactly what it is, and it's waiting for that. So yeah, you might think that's kind of crazy to think about, but you got to remember that God isn't bound by our time. He isn't restricted as we are to move forward in time. He's existent in all time, and that one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day to God. All this is happening at once to him, I think. Well, you might also notice that God says he won't destroy all living creatures, but I think the key word to that promise is as I have done. And if you look through the whole story so far, it's all about the floodwaters being released on the earth, destroying all life. It doesn't seem very crazy to me to say that as I have done is in fact referring to the entire act wiping out the creatures with a global flood, specifically. Being that the entire story is about the flood, and God talks about destroying the earth with water, both before and after this verse, I think the context says that this means only floodwaters. And by the way, there's no mention of a generalized natural disaster promise, only global waters, flooding and killing all life. That's as far as that goes.